How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I just wanted to let y'all know how adamant I am about starting this channel and trying to get it kicked off. I'm trying to find a new place to launch the boat at on the northern side of the lake because I found a part of the river channel that runs right up close to the bank in a lot of spots on the north side of the river, or on the north side of the lake. And I figured with there being current coming out of the river, that it might be a little bit better fishing than the south side by the dam. So I come up here. It looked like on the map that this is a creek that feeds the lake. It looked like it was pretty shallow off the map, but I wasn't entirely sure on how shallow it was. So I wanted to come down here and check it out. I finally got the boat off the trailer earlier. I'm putting it back on now, but I got the boat off the trailer and I sunk in the mud out there. It took me probably a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes to get from where I'm at now out to maybe there, like right there in the hole right there. You can't really tell, but it's only like 40 or 50 foot from me right now. I've got the trailer as deep as I can possibly get it. At the end of this ramp, the mud hits and the trailer goes back up. So if I back up another 2 foot, the trailer is pretty much out of the water. So this is all I've got to deal with. I'm out in the water because the water is way too shallow for me to load the boat as it sits. So I'm as dedicated as it gets right now, folks. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to be out here catching fish, but I tell you what, these last couple weeks, the weather, for one, you can't really tell it right now, but it is super, super windy right now. It's a steady, probably 15, and it gusts at around 20 to 25. But I'm trying to figure out how to fish in all conditions, wind included. So I wanted to come out and try it. I got it out, and then motored up this little creek for about 10 minutes because I was having to go real slow. And I hit more mud. It just got probably shallower than it is here. My boat was dragging everywhere. I didn't realize it at the time, but the foot of my motor, all the way up to where the foot bolts on to the motor, or to the bottom side of the motor, was just caked in mud. I had mud coming out my pee hole on the motor, but I think I got it flushed out. It was going clear again after I ran it for a minute, so I think that's going to be good. Long story short, it is way too shallow to be launching my boat right here. Apparently it's it's a lot lower than what it normally is. Judging by the dark spots on the trees around here, if I had to guess, it's probably about 15 to 20 foot lower right now than normal. So we're trying. We're going to go fishing one of these days, and we're going to find the fish. We're going to find a pattern. At work today, I rigged up all my rods with every kind of summer bait that I could find in all my research. We got frogs, trick worm on a shaky head. We got a smaller spook because I wasn't sure how big the fish are around here, so I got a smaller spook. I got a swim jig, a 1/2-inch swim jig. We got a square bill, a deep diving crankbait, and on my spinner rod I got a drop shot hooked up. So we were covered everything from shallow to 60 foot deep if I could find it, and everything in between. Ledges, rocks, mud, gravel, sand, everything. We were going to fish it all today. But this creek that I'm trying to launch the boat in says otherwise. And it's 6 o'clock, so we've only got about maybe 2 hours worth of really good daylight left. So I don't know if we're going to get to do any good fishing today, because by the time I get the boat out of here, it's going to take a little while. Because I've got to wait out, grab the boat, drag it way out there, and then pull it onto the boat and just hope that I don't sink in the mud. As we were talking, I just about sunk right here. So it's probably it may be another half hour, 20 minutes to a half hour before I can get the boat on the trailer enough to where I can drag it out of here. So I don't think we're going to get to do any fishing today. I'm sorry, I really wanted to. I had set out to do it today, even though this wind's just blowing this little boat everywhere. Let's discuss the baits that I'm going to be using in this lake. The water temperature, if I had to guess, is around 80 to 85 degrees in a lot of places up in the northern part of the lake. It's a little bit warmer, I found, than the southern part by the dam for whatever reason. Um, so in that area, we're going to be doing a lot of deeper fishing on ledges, and we're going to try to find structure along the bank that is quickly accessible to the river channel, which I found a couple places where the river will come up. Like if here's the bank, the river comes out and makes a really hard bank, makes a really hard turn right here up close to the bank, within 100 or 150 foot from the bank. So structure along that part of the bank where the river comes by, right up in here on the bank, are going to be good places to go fish, because the fish that are going shallow this time of the year will be right here, seeing as how it's easily accessible to the river. Some baits that I'm going to be throwing on the ledges and in the deeper spots. Hold on a minute. Deep diving cranks, especially when there's rocks. You want, if you're casting up into 10 foot of water and reeling down into 25 foot of water, you want a crankbait that can go 20 to 25 foot, because you want it, it's going to be coming down through the water column like this. It's going to be twisting sideways like this. It's going to be twisting down through there, and you want that nose just digging into the rocks. You want it bouncing all over everything. I don't know if you can tell, but that bill is just all scratched up, and that's from bouncing and banging all over rocks across the bottom. That crashing and banging and that erratic movement, along with that rattle, especially when the water's pretty stained, are going to attract the fish from a longer distance. It's got a lot of noise and a lot of water displacement, so they can hear it and they can feel it. They can feel the water vibrating from a long ways off. I'm going to use that on ledge drop-offs. You can be sitting out deep and cast toward the bank. If you can find kind of where the fish are sitting, whether or not they're in 10 foot, 12 foot, 15 foot, whatever, you can find that out and go sit up in 12 foot of water and cast parallel with the bank. You can, when the river channel comes around here, you can sit here and cast in this whole area right here and cast on that 12 foot ish, around 12 foot portion of that ledge, and just crank that right down through there. If that being the case, if you're 12 foot, I would downsize. This is a 6XD. This dives, I think it dives 19 or 20 foot. Downsize to a 5XD. That dives around 12 to 15 foot, if I'm not mistaken. Anyhow, moving on. You can also, in the same places that you fish the deep diving, throw lipless. Throw a heavy lipless. This is only a 3/8, but they make them in half and 3/4 and all the way up to an ounce, I think. So given the amount of current, you'll have to upsize. But I don't think in that area there's a whole lot of current, so this 3/8 will work. You fish it on ledges, because that's going to be coming down through it. You're just going to be hitting the bottom, digging through mud, digging through rocks. It's just going to be hitting and deflecting off of everything. This one also rattles. So in stained and muddy water, it's going to have a lot of water. It's going to have not as much water displacement as this, but it will have some, and it's a lot louder. It's got a lot more rattle to it than this. Maybe not a lot more. It's got a different sounding rattle anyhow. You can fish this on ledges, out deep, out shallow. A lot of people just think this is for ripping through grass, when in reality you can fish it through grass. You can fish it on rocks and sand, mud, around sticks. Really shallow. If you've got 6 inches of water, throw this dude out there, bounce it across the rocks. You never know. You never know exactly where them fish are going to be when you're finding a pattern. So throw this dude everywhere. I'm going to be throwing a square bill. This I think these square bills, it doesn't say on here. I think these small ones, this is a KVD 1.5, if I'm not mistaken. It might be a 1.0. But it dives less than 5 feet. If I had to guess by the size of this one, probably around 3 foot. So this is going to be thrown up shallow, around laydowns, around rocks, cast it up under docks, bridge pilings, anywhere shallow, minus grass. They don't like grass a whole lot, but any kind of hard structure, rocks, anything like that, these shine. Let's do that water first. I'm going to be throwing chatterbaits or a bladed jig. It doesn't have to be a chatterbait, but a bladed jig and a swim bait, or a swim jig, my bad. A swim jig and a football jig. Football jigs will typically be thrown in rocky areas. If you're throwing through grass or you're punching mats or anything like that, switch to a different kind of jig. This is going to be used to bounce and drag through rocks, over rocks, around rocks, anything that has to do with rocks. If you're throwing around docks and around structure and bridge pilings and anything of that sort, I'd switch over to a swim jig because it's got a narrower head. It's not going to get hung up. That's going to deflect off of things as you're swimming through. It's also got a weed guard on it, so it's not going to get hung up on the grass. Even though this has got a weed guard on it, that big old fat head like that isn't going to go through grass very well. The swim jigs will push their way through the grass much better. I'm going to be using a bladed jig with probably a maybe 3.5 inch trailer on it. I'm going to be throwing this. You can upsize your weight and throw it as deep as you want to. If you want to throw it in 30 foot of water, just wait for it to sink. Slow roll it across the bottom. Bounce it over rocks. Bounce it through grass. Not real thick grass. What's cool about these is you can pick your rod tip up a little bit, and it'll raise it up in the water column. Put your rod tip down, reel it slower, it'll go down in the water column. So if you find the grass right up in here, raise your rod tip up, move this right over the top of that submerged grass, and it'll do good. On the other hand, you can fish it as shallow as you want to. You can throw it up 6 inches of water if you want to, around rocks, through mud, sand, grass, anything. Throw it around docks, around boats, around bridge pilings. Really anywhere that you want to fish this, you can fish it. Same goes for a swim jig. It's pretty weedless given the weed guard and the real skinny head. If you're fishing lots and lots of riprap, if you find lots of it, I'd switch over to a football jig. Let's see here, what else we got? Spinner baits. We're going to be using lots of spinner baits this time of year. They're a really good shad and bluegill imitator. Given the current water conditions in this lake, especially in the northern part, it's almost muddy. It's not quite muddy, it's really stained. So I'm not really going to go to a willow leaf as much as I'll lean toward a Colorado blade, which is the round one. Here's a willow leaf. It's Colorado. They have an Indiana blade that's kind of a mix between these two. Let me know. They have an Indiana blade that's kind of mixed between these two, but I don't have any of those. Those would be good for slightly stained water. You don't need as much water displacement, and you'll be able to reel it a little bit quicker than you reel this. You can't move this one along just too quick, because this won't do what it's supposed to. It's harder to move through the water column or through the water than this is. It's not near as slim line as the willow leaf, so you reel it slower and you get lots and lots of thump out of it. That mixed with the skirt, you've got lots of water displacement, lots of noise. Not really so much noise. I guess it makes a little bit of noise with the beads and all that, but it's more of a thump, more of a water displacement thing. These are better in muddier water, which is what I'm fishing around. Muddier, dark stained water. Let's see here. We're going to be throwing frogs. Everybody loves throwing frogs. we're going to throw these anywhere shallow, anywhere where there's grass up underneath the water, around laydowns. If you've got lily pads and thick vegetation, these non-popping hollow body frogs are awesome. You can throw them on top of anything. If you've got a puddle of grass this big and it's surrounded by tree stumps and real thick grass and stuff that you could barely put your hand down through, throw a frog. It'll land right on top of it. It'll never get hung up. It's just an awesome bait to use whenever there's thick vegetation. Later on down the road, we'll go through all these baits in more detail and what kind of rig, what kind of rod, reel, and line to use with each one, and kind of more in depth on where to throw all these. But just overall, as a hey, this is what you can be using to figure out what your pattern is going to be. That's all we're doing today. Just a shopping list, pretty much. This is what you can be going to get. Frogs, all kinds of jigs, different kinds of crankbaits, spinner baits, a top water popper. This is about as old school as it gets, and it still catches fish everywhere. Throw it in the shade up by the bank, where if you can find grass beds and any kind of submerged vegetation or submerged structure that a fish could feel camouflaged in, throw this right on top of it. Throw it anywhere. Up underneath docks works really good. Around boats, pilings, logs, any kind of structure that can be harboring a fish. Throw it around it. Big old walking plug. This is a big Zara Spook. I'm not sure if it's the biggest size they make, but it's the most common size that I've seen used. This would be thrown up. This would be thrown up around, kind of like the popper. Anywhere that you would throw a popper, throw this. It's going to get hung up in the weeds, so don't throw it around grass. You can throw it at the edges of grass, and then that works pretty good. Throw it around docks and boats, and just up shallow in shaded areas. Find pockets of shade toward the evening time. Throw it all in the shade. Really anywhere that's got structure, visible structure, throw it around it. Let's see what else we got here. Worms. One of my favorite ways to fish. I think the majority of my fish has been caught on a 5-inch Senko. I normally use green pumpkin, but given the water conditions being so dark, June bug tends to be better. I don't know why. You can use both colors, June bug and green pumpkin, but June bug tends to shine for some reason. It tends to not shine like literally, but it tends to do better in darker water conditions. A 5-inch Senko, I think this is a 6-inch trick worm on a drop shot or a shaky head. Either one, probably a shaky head. You can fish this one deep or shallow. You can fish this one deep or shallow. And a big old giant ribbon tail worm. This is a 10.5-inch ribbon tail. You can put this one also on a shaky head, on a Texas rig, on a drop shot, Carolina rig. Same goes for all these. You can fish these worms any way that you want to. There's different ways of rigging for different applications and what you want to do with it. But we'll get to all that later. Like I said, we'll go through all these baits. We'll break them all down in later videos. Because if I was to do that now, this video would be 3 hours long, and nobody wants to sit through a 3-hour tackle video. So that's just an idea. That's just your basic baits to use to try to find a summer pattern in just about any lake that you go to. This particular one happens to be a lowland reservoir. Number 3, if I don't believe. There's 3 or 4 different kinds of lowland reservoirs, and I think this is the 3rd kind. So anyway, to wrap it up, worms, plastic worms, crankbaits of all kinds, jigs, different kinds of jigs depending on your circumstances, frogs, popping, and traditional. Oh, hey, do yourself a favor and cut the legs. Cut one leg a little bit shorter on your walking frog. I cut this one a little bit too short. I think I'm going to trim this one up. You don't want it that much longer. I think I'm going to take about maybe 1/2 inch off of this one here. Anyway, cut your leg on one side shorter than the other, and it'll help it walk better. I think it has something to do with it throwing the balance off of one side, so it winds up just slinging it around a little bit better. Spinner baits. Spinner baits are always good, all times throughout the year, but they really do good in the summertime. Giving your water clarity, and we'll go through all this later on. Giving your water clarity, you'll use gold, silver, Colorado, Indiana willow leaf blades. Just giving your water conditions and what they're feeding on, and top waters, different kinds of top waters, plugs, poppers, devil's horses, prop style baits, any of that kind of thing. I don't know how many of the baits this was. Let's see here. 1, 2. We're going to categorize all these things. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's 6 different kinds of baits. There's several more that can be used, but to just get started on really inexpensive baits, these 6 categories, 6 or 7 categories that I just named off, will really be all that you need to figure out your pattern. Once you find a pattern, you can start using different baits, or start using one in particular bait a lot more if you figure out that that's what they're feeding on, and really dial it in and catch a lot of fish. Like I was saying earlier, wasn't able to do any fishing because of the creek condition. It just wasn't letting. It wasn't having it. Something was saying don't go fishing yesterday. I don't know what it was. Might have been the wind. Might have been because of the wind, but I don't know. Something was keeping me from going fishing yesterday, and that's okay. We'll get to that later on. Hopefully the wind had died down just a little bit. I need to learn how to go catch them in the wind, but 15, 20 mile an hour wind with that little boat of mine, it doesn't do good. It just blows it. It blows it all around. It's like I don't know. It's kind of like one of them duck toys you put in the pool. It's just there's no controlling it when it's real windy. So I'm gonna try to take it out in the wind. It probably won't do too good, but don't know until you try it, right? So we'll get it out eventually, and I really hope that we're able to get some on the water footage. I really want to go do some good fishing, but it's one thing after another lately seems to be keeping me from doing it. But it'll happen one of these days. I'm not procrastinating. I'm just doing my best. So anyway, I guess we'll see y'all on the next one. Have a good one.